Hey Grok, is this true? If you spend a lot of time on Twitter, then you're probably familiar with the three insufferable words. Grok, is this true? So, how did a simple query to an AI chatbot become a symbol for being insufferable in online spaces? Hi, my name is Garnet, and I make content for people curious about internet culture and tech. And today I'll be exploring how Grok became the internet's most hated AI chatbot. So, to understand why people hate the phrase Grok, is this true, you have to know the background of how it started and what it has come to represent. Grok is the inbuilt AI chatbot on Twitter that was built with the idea of being this neutral, truth telling chatbot in the face of all these so called left leaning chatbots. So, Elon Musk particularly felt strongly about having an AI chatbot that represented a more neutral perspective in the eyes of right leaning people. And he felt like other chatbots were too left leaning. And so he was like, okay, I need this truth telling neutral chatbot. And that's how he started developing Grok.
So it's essentially very similar to ChatGPT, other than it doesn't have like the woke parameters built into it. Like Google was the
Yeah,
worst, right?
yeah,
The Gemini was the worst.
yeah. I mean, Gemini was like, people ask Gemini like, which one is worse, global thermonuclear war or misgendering Caitlyn Jenner? And would say like misgendering Caitlyn Jenner, and then even Caitlyn Jenner weighed in and said, no, that's insane. Definitely, nuclear war is way worse.
In public, we started seeing people use it for fact checking, hence the trend Grok, is this true? Grok has proven to be really useful at finding historical information on Twitter because it basically has access to all tweets that are still on the platform. And so it has become a really good tool to do deep dives of tweets and Twitter history, especially since Twitter search has been broken for a really long time. And so there was some optimism about how useful it was going to be. And to be fair, Grok has really performed highly on certain AI benchmarks. So, because it actually has really good utility, Grok has become the go to for quick fact checking on the platform. And as somebody who likes nifty tools, I think the idea of having Grok as an inbuilt fact checker was a good idea. Um, if it's working or not, that's a whole different topic, and I'll get into that a bit later. So, how did something so useful become so insufferable? First of all, I think a lot of people genuinely feel like the use of Grok is often just stupid and silly, and it's never really to fact check important things. You could tweet the most benign, silly statement, the most simple statement, and here comes a user asking Grok to fact check in the comment section. It's become a symbol of being annoying in public, but also some of these questions that people ask Grok to fact check and are using Grok's credits on are usually things that are a simple Google search away. Or sometimes it's like, why don't you just ask the original poster to just explain what they're talking about instead of inviting a machine into the conversation. But in general, people feel like people who use Grok are lazy and stupid, and they could just use Google if it's really that deep. These are not my words. This is just the sentiment I get from seeing how people react when people bring Grok into their tweet threads. And so, because it's become this symbol of dullness, it's been mimified to the point that Grok, is this true, is sort of this satirical thing that people will quote your tweet with to sound funny. And there's so many memes that have been made showing this Grok user as somebody who's dull and uncurious. So the second reason why people hate Grok users, and I think this is the most significant reason, is because people use Grok to invalidate and undermine people. The first major group of people who do this are conservative and right wing leaning users who sort of see Grok as this truth telling objective chatbot, the way Elon frames it. So, anytime a left leaning person, it could be a journalist, it could be the most qualified person on earth, speaks to a topic that they are subject matter expert, there comes a user saying, Grok, is this true? As a way to invalidate the person who is speaking. You often see Grok siding with the original statement being made, and it makes the Grok users even look more stupid than they already do by inviting this machine that they've decided is the arbiter of truth into the conversation. Then another set of users who use Grok to invalidate people are men. And you see this a lot on African Twitter. Anytime a woman makes a statement, it could be about anything, it could even be about the female reproductive system. There comes a man saying, Grok, is this true? And so Grok has become this symbol of digital mansplaining where people are always trying to invalidate and pick apart at anything a woman says and try to find where they might be wrong as an aha moment. And so people who use Grok are pretty insufferable. I think of them as the devil's advocate people in class who are always trying to bring the other perspective, trying to bring you down based on your opinion, trying to find out where you're wrong. And it doesn't help that Grok is also significantly used for misogynistic reasons, such as policing women's presence on the platform. It's become common practice, and this originated on Kenyan and Nigerian Twitter. But yeah, it's become common practice to police women who post their pictures on Twitter. And so if a woman who is dressed conservatively posts her picture on Twitter and people, meaning men, do not like it, you'll see a lot of men asking Grok to undress this woman and make her look more seductive. And the opposite happens even more. If you see somebody dressed in a more revealing manner, you'll often see people ask Grok to clothe this person. It doesn't help that Twitter has not stopped Grok from doing this. It's still an ongoing issue. And yeah, this is the reason why people hate Grok users so much. And the third reason is the environmental and climate reason. There's a discomfort that African American people feel when people use Grok because a story came out talking about how Grok is impacting the health of people in Memphis, a city in Tennessee. And Memphis is disproportionately black, and people who are poorer tend to be more affected by climate change. And there have been stories profiled of Memphis residents who have health issues because XAI has huge data centers in the city, and they have included 35 gas turbines that were never approved by the government. And so there's a high level of emissions in the city that is already being ravaged by climate change. And you have Black people being disproportionately affected. So, one thing I've seen is a lot of people who are uncomfortable with the use of Grok and who actually hate people who use Grok are Black people who identify with climate justice issues. And this is not to say that Black people are not using Grok, but it's to say that for a lot of minorities, or even just people who care about the environment and climate change, this is a huge cause of contention for them. And this is why they hate Grok users, because the story has been so explicit, but people still continue to use this chatbot. And the fourth reason I can list about why people hate Grok users is that they tend to be pretty insensitive. Because the largest use of Grok is public and in your face, you will see people ask Grok the most insensitive questions under people's tweets. The craziest thing I've seen somebody use Grok for is under a memorial tweet where somebody was saying RIP so and so. And this user comes down there and says, Hey Grok, please help me understand how this person passed away and how they were related to, the original poster. And Grok, does a Twitter dive and comes back and says, Hey, this person is so and so's baby mama, and this is how they passed away. And this was so crass and insensitive. Grok users are just like that. They are in your face, they are insensitive, they do not care about the consequence. All they want is their goddamn answer. And this really sets Grok users in place as the most insufferable, insensitive internet users out there. So I guess the thing is, if you put all these reasons together, you might ask, what makes Grok special? I see people using other chatbots for the same reasons. I mean, ChatGPT was found to be reducing people's critical thinking skills and promoting laziness, as per an MIT study, just like Grok. And all chatbots are really just energy suckers that are increasing energy prices for the average person. So, what sets Grok apart from any other chatbot? I think the first reason is pretty obvious. Grok is intentionally made to be contrarian, and by contrarian, or what is seen as contrarian in the current political environment, is just to be anything but left leaning. But also, Grok is often fine tuned to please Elon Musk and his ideologies and what he thinks is right. And I don't think this is any different from any other chatbot. Um, Chatbots are often fine tuned with the values that the developers think are important. I think the difference is that other companies have not been as explicit about what values are guiding them in aligning their AIs. But Elon Musk has been very explicit. But also, I think in July of 2025, Grok went rogue and was making anti Semitic statements and white supremacist statements and claims and conspiracy theory claims that have been debunked, like the famous South African white genocide claims, which have consistently been debunked by South African experts and the South African government. But it's clear that the goal here is to make an AI chatbot that is perhaps white supremacist, if I could explicitly say it. Yeah, the goal here is to make an AI chatbot that advances the wants and goals of white supremacists. And that is the most obvious reason that people hate Grok for. And I don't blame them, because as a person, as a black person, why would I use a chatbot that is developed to be against me and to put me in harm's way? But now, Grok users aside, I think a bigger problem lies in the fact that Grok is not even that good for what it has been claimed to be good at. Grok, is this true, is a trend that's locking a lot of Twitter users in a misinformation bubble, a misinformation echo chamber, because they're not reading outside of Twitter. They're relying on all the information checks in the platform, either through Grok or more preferably the community notes. And so you have, and the reason I say this is because there are so many instances and so many studies that have been done on the efficacy of Grok for fact checking. And the consensus is that Grok is not good at fact checking. So why should people use it? I saw a crazy example the other day. Somebody in Kenya was making a statement about a former First Lady, Lucy Kibaki, and how her advocacy helped in the campaigns against HIV and AIDS, and she helped people gain access to ARVs. And so this user who was saying this had posted a picture of this first lady, Lucy Kibaki. And then somebody comes and asks Grok under this tweet and says, "Hey Grok, is this true?" And Grok completely misidentifies this first lady as another first lady. And Grok says, "Hey, this is Margaret Kenyatta, and this is what she's done." It did it with so much confidence that if you do not know the history of the country or the political figures in the country, you would have eaten it up. And that's the thing with AI and AI chatbots. You are only likely to know that you're being lied to or that the AI chatbot is hallucinating if you're already an expert at what you're querying about. So, for the most part, the average person will not know that they're being misinformed because they're often asking about things that they're not experts at. This was the most blatant example of how stupid this tool is, but also I think it helps. It sort of makes me question whether Grok is really going outside of Twitter to fetch information. Like, is it just relying on tweets for information? And also, that's a problem because Grok is trained on Twitter, Twitter data and tweets. It's not really the best fact checking tool because we know that Twitter is full of garbage. Twitter is hardly the place where you want to train a bot that you want to exclusively use for fact checking. And I saw a research paper the other day that says that LLMs, large language models, can also get brain rot. And if LLMs can get brain rot by being fed bad data, can you imagine how much brain rot Grok is getting, considering the fact that its largest training base is tweets? Grok is not fine tuned for fact checking. If somebody wanted to make a fact checking bot, they'd have to make sure that majority or even all of the information is coming from credible sources like news websites or research papers. So yeah, Grok doesn't have the capability to actually be a good fact checker. One study I can talk about is a study by the Digital Forensic Research Lab, which did a study of 130,000 posts relating to the Israel and Iran war that happened earlier this year. And it found that Grok was inconsistent in fact checking and even struggled to authenticate AI generated images or determine whether X accounts belonged to official government sources, which is crazy because you're telling me that Grok has access to, you know, all tweets and all the histories of accounts on Twitter, and it can't verify whether an account is actually owned by an authentic government source. Or you're telling me that an AI chatbot is shit at identifying AI generated content. That's crazy. But it also shows you how bad, Grok is at what it's supposed to be good at. And also, I think something I found interesting was that how much people are using Grok. um, I think when you see it on the feed, you're like, yeah, a lot of people are using Grok. But Al Jazeera found that people called on Grok 2.3 million times in just 1 week between June 5th and June 12th, which is absolutely crazy to me. But yeah, so Grok, is this true? Is just a trend that's locking people in misinformation. And the thing is that AI chatbots are very convincing. They're very good at giving you the perception of knowledge. And because in some cases Grok is right, if Grok is right an X number of times, then a user is less likely to know when Grok is not right. And I think therein lies the bigger issue of how do you parse out information when you've now become dependent on this tool, and you think it's right, and you're also not looking at external sources, you're not opening articles, you're asking this bot for all your context. I think that's the issue with media literacy now. Personally, in as much as I think Grok users are insufferable and not amazing, I don't think Grok is doing anything much differently from other AI chatbots, well, except the overt white supremacist values, which is a big except if you really think about it. But hey, do we know the values of OpenAI? We do not. Um, in some ways, I don't think Grok is doing much worse. I think it's just as similar to the impacts of other apps. I think the issue, which I said before, is that with other apps, it's private, it's not public, and the impact cannot be seen as quickly. Um, so for me, it's a visibility issue. Grok is true, is in your face. It's invading your space. And also it's a public performance of everything that people hate about AI. People hate the intellectual laziness, the inability to take a few steps to look at external sources, the false certainty, the placing of trust on AI as the arbiter of truth and this neutral party, while the human is biased and flawed, and their judgment is less valuable than algorithmic judgment. Grok represents this anti AI sentiment that a lot of people have. And the real problem for me isn't that Grok exists, but it's that we've created a culture where people trust a chatbot more than they trust humans, but also hey, but also Twitter culture, a culture that's just insufferable and hell bent on causing anger and raising people's emotions for engagement, because we know that's what gets rewarded on Twitter. So a culture that promotes rage bait instead of actual community interaction. But yeah, if you've gotten this far, tell me what you think. Do you think that Grok is much worse than other apps? What do you think of the Grok? Is this true trend? And also, if you're here, I really thank you for getting this far. I would love to hear your feedback on how I could make these videos more engaging, but also what other topics I could cover that could be interesting to you. Thank you very much, and see you in my next video.